Hi, let's have a look here at selections and a little bit of navigating. We're going to open up the document that was included in the tutorial downloads known as O1 Living on a Heart. This is a piece that Adobe supplied through their Illustrator training that was designed by a professional artist. Wish I could give them credit, but I don't know who it was. We're going to talk about a few things today here so that we can be proficient in selecting and manipulating basic elements within a document. We're going to be talking about a total of 4 tools pretty much. So we'll be starting right at the beginning here. This piece was made, it's very intricate, it's very layered, lots of really great stuff going on here. And it might be a good opportunity for you to witness a little bit of the construction and process that this artist went through just by a few things that we're going to do with these very simple tools. Starting off, we're going to be looking at the first top tools, the selection tool and the direct selection tool, and we will also be looking at the hand tool and the zoom tool. These tools might seem relatively elementary, but there are some very specific properties and nuances to these things that you should be well aware of and capable of using throughout your own work. With the selection tool, which is the darkest arrow on the top, this tool is intended for selecting specific shapes. So if I click on one of these flames, it selects the entire flame, and that's pretty much all I can do. What you notice is that as soon as I click on one, it has an outline around it. That kind of helps you understand what element you currently have selected. So I'm just doing a simple one click. There is something that you can turn on that might be helpful. To some of you, you would prefer this, and it's something found under View. And, well, smart guys are on. It's interesting. It's not working here. Off. Now let's turn back on. There we go. I had to turn mine off and on, but now you can see I am not selecting anything by clicking on it. I'm just passing over these elements, and you can see them highlighting before I even click on it. So that kind of helps you say, am I over the right part? Is that what I want, or is this thing what I want? So that is something you can activate or deactivate by seeing if it's checked or unchecked. So I just unchecked it just because for me, I feel like I know things well enough here. I don't really need that extra assistance, and sometimes it distracts me. So I turn it off. So one more thing that we'll do is we'll revisit the preferences real quick, and we're going to look at selection and anchor display under the preferences. You did watch the first movie from the first session about preferences. I know you did. But anyways, you can turn on this thing called Show Anchor Points in Selection Tool and Shape Tools. If I turn that on and click OK, you'll end up seeing that the artwork looks a little bit different. It shows you all of the points that were used to create this shape, and then as well as the segments in between those points. This is a good thing and a bad thing. It's for me, it's you know, I could go either way, but for a beginner, I would say that it's something that you could not do with. But I just wanted to show you that that's there, because you'll see the difference here in a second when we go back to the other tool that we're going to be looking at. So I'm back into preferences, I'm turning off Show Anchor Points, and they're gone. All right, so with the direct selection tool, I can grab a shape and I can move it, relocate it, okay? Things like that, all right? Now I've moved it a couple times. You should be well used to the edit undo move, Command Z. So I'm just going to do that a couple times here, get it back to where it was. So that's the direct, or the selection tool. Now we're going to talk about the direct selection tool. This is the white colored arrow up here, and when I was to click on the middle of the shape, I still get the shape selected, but now I see all those points. This is the tool where those points actually matter. The main selection tool that we talked about first, those points do not matter. But now with this one, I can actually click on specific points and select them. These are the points that were used to create this shape. So I could say at this part of the flame, I'd like to select it, make it bigger, you know, a little wider out there. So that's what's going on with this other selection tool. It's more specific. And it's called the direct selection because you're directly selecting points or multiple points. You can hold down Shift and get multiple points selected and affect them. So before we get too involved in this, let's go into the other two tools, which are the hand tool and the zoom tool. I want to get in close so we can actually see what we're doing. So I'm going to talk about the zoom tool first. The zoom tool allows us to move into work by clicking. If you just click, it'll focus on work that is selected. So right now I have that selected and it's kind of focusing on this point right here. Or you can also click and drag if you have animated zoom turn on in your preferences. We talked about that real quickly, I do believe, in our first video for this session, the first session. If I click and drag, you get this animated zoom and it lets you go in and find that spot that you want. But maybe this is not the spot I want. This is where that hand comes in handy. So I'll get the hand tool and I'll now just kind of relocate and position my screen so that I'm looking at the work. I'm not actually moving any of the artwork, I'm just moving myself through the screen. Some people love a window called Navigator. And this window pops up and the Navigator, make it a little bit bigger, I can, gives us a thumbnail of our artwork or artboard, and then this tiny little box is what I'm currently zoomed in looking at. And I can grab that box and I can say, well, let's look down at the bottom here. And when I let go, it'll update that thing. Okay, so that is a way to navigate that some people just prefer because you can see the whole thing all at once in this little thumbnail, and you can just kind of move around and get to your other areas without having to do the whole scrub and scroll thing. Now, I'm a big fan of shortcuts. Shortcuts are just time savers and just very convenient. So right now I'm really zoomed in. I would like to zoom out. I can get my zoom tool, and if I press the option key, it is a negative zoom, so I'm zooming out. Or I can do something like Command minus on the keyboard, and that's a zoom out without having to go to that tool specifically. And then there's a nice setting that allows you to put all of your artwork into the window, so it makes your entire artboard fit to your window. And that would be the same as going to View, Fit Artboard into Window, but that shortcut is Command 0. So boom, with just a quick Command 0, you can zoom back out and have a look at your entire thing, and that's super handy. So let's just say we don't even want to use these tools physically. You can be on any tool basically. I'm going to just have my selection tool active, and maybe I'm selecting this yellow thing over here. I'd like to zoom into it. I can press Command and Space bar at the same time with 2 fingers, and now I can zoom in or do the slide, which zooms in over time. This is a very graphic heavy document, so it's pretty sluggish. A more simple document would zoom real fast. So that way I was able to use my keyboard and not have to go down and get that tool. The other thing is you can just press spacebar, it turns into your hand, and you can just kind of move around real quick, and then as soon as you're where you want to be, you can let go and you're back to the tool that you were originally on. So those are little shortcuts that are helpful. I just want to talk about the benefit of selecting points and zooming and doing all this that we're covering right now. It's really great to be able to get in close to our work and be critical and try to make it better. And this is, like I said, this is done by a professional illustrator. It's really fantastic, but you can even find mistakes if you start zooming in. I'm going to zoom in by this little door at the top of the stairway, and right away I see something that I would call a little oops. I see several of them along here in the steps. So these oops should be edited with the correct tool. if I use my selection tool, it's not going to give me the opportunity to move points. So I need access to those points. I'm going to grab the direct selection tool, and now I can grab this little tip here and I can bring it down and make it match this other one. If I'm talking about trying to make these stair steps be a little cleaner, then I can grab those points and start tightening that up so that it feels much more cohesive. So I could do this for days. It's one of those things where I just kind of zone out on fine-tuning. But it's a great lesson for my students because I feel that you really do benefit from taking that second look into your work and getting in there and seeing what you can do to make it tighter or better or more polished and whatnot. So just a few more things about selections. Right now, I'm on my direct selection tool. I'm able to grab points. Okay, but what if I said, well, I don't want anything selected right now? There's a whole menu dedicated to selections. And this is where you could do select all. That'll select everything in your entire document. You can select all just on the artboard that you're currently working on. And then there's deselect, and this one comes in super handy. And it's something that I end up kind of, my hand is programmed for this shortcut for doing this so much. And my left hand's almost always hovering over my keyboard where my thumb is near command, and I can do a Command-Shift-A. That will deselect all. So you can see my selection just went away. So I'm going to zoom out all the way so I can see my entire document. Select all is Command-A. So if I did Command-A, everything is selected right now. And wow, what a crazy disaster that is. But if I do Command-Shift-A, deselect all, that'll just get rid of everything. But if I had one thing selected and I want to get away from that, Command-Shift-A, we're back to nothing. So that will be just a practice that you're going to be having to deal with. Last thing I'm going to talk about here is going to be something I'm going to get in close again. And I'll get into this flame. So if we're going to talk about a few of the specifics of points, I'm going to use my direct selection tool. And I'm going to come in, I'm going to grab a point along a curve because I want to show you what's going on with these curves. These points, this shape, this whole flame was created by one point at a time. Click, 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 click with the pen tool, okay? Or maybe even the pencil tool, it's possible. But this shape is made up of points or anchors. Sometimes they're called anchors, sometimes they're called vertices, or a vertex if you're just talking about a specific one. But each point has a segment between them, a line, a path. Okay, it's not really a line that's physical. It's just it's an idea of a line. It's a path between the points, and then each point has the instructions to determine what that path is going to look like, whether it's going to be straight or it's going to be curved, and how much of a curve is going to be influenced here. And the curve is represented by these handles that you're seeing pop up once you click on different points. So these handles are called Beziers. The Bezier is something that you can manipulate with your direct selection tool. You cannot access these with your regular selection tool, only with the direct selection tool. And when I access a Bezier and I start to move it around, you can see that it influences the curve and then the instructions of what that curve should look like, how accentuated the curve should be or how little the curve should be. If I bring that in really close to that anchor, the line pretty much becomes straight. A point without any Beziers will be a straight line. Okay, there will be no curve. And we're going to get into this in detail in our next piece, but I just figured that we should talk about that right now. Last thing, there's something students do fairly regularly by accident, and it is a keyboard shortcut. They're like trying something, and maybe by accident they hit Command-Y, and their whole document does this. And I'll go all the way out. This is just a viewing mode called outlines, and it is something that happens if you hit Command-Y. Or you can do this up here in the View menu. There's the Command Y. Do you want to look at your artwork rendered out by your graphics card, or do you want to simplify it and look at it in outlines? Sometimes we go to outlines for the sake of simple editing, quick editing, or maybe even just, that's funny, it did the whole box thing this time, being able to quickly move through a document that has a lot of information that you just don't want the computer to think about. So you can set it to outlines only, and all that color information, gradients and drop shadows and special effects, they all go away. But it's one of those things that it happens accidentally and someone goes, oh shoot, what did I just do? And they'll try to go to edit, undo, and there is no undo for this. It's just the way that you're viewing your artwork. So if you can kind of just remember that that's a simple little thing up in the View menu, or if you just make a note somewhere on a scratch pad and say Command Y as outlines, then maybe you'll remember once you actually come across that accidental moment. All right, that's it for now. Thanks, and we'll move on to the next stuff here.